A sealed chamber protected ancient blueprints for centuries. This is the true story of a discovery that changed archaeology forever. By the end, you will understand the real purpose of a lost civilization's greatest monument. These fragile documents reveal hidden rooms and a technology that defies simple explanation. Why would an entire society build secrets directly into its most sacred space? What do you believe is the ultimate purpose of a secret kept for 1,000 years? A sudden desert rain did more than just cool the air. It washed away the dust of centuries from a hillside, revealing the sharp, straight edge of a stone slab that had gone completely unnoticed. The team, led by the meticulous Dr. Aris Thorne, worked for hours to carefully pry the heavy lid from its ancient seating. What they found was not a tomb filled with treasure, but a different kind of vault entirely. The chamber below was perfectly dry, its air still and sealed for generations, and inside, resting on stone shelves, were the real riches. There were no glittering gold statues or chests of jewels. Instead, they found stacks of meticulously drawn plans and blueprints, rendered on treated animal hide that had survived the ages. The initial confusion among the archaeologists was palpable. Why would someone go to such lengths to preserve simple building instructions? But that confusion quickly gave way to a profound sense of awe. These were not just any plans. They were intricate technical diagrams filled with precise lines and annotations in a script no one could immediately read. They depicted structures and chambers that were completely unknown, never part of the accepted historical record for this civilization. This accidental find in a seemingly insignificant ruin was instantly transformed into one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the century. It set the stage for a much deeper investigation. The real mystery, the one that would consume them for years, began the moment they started to decipher what these remarkable documents were truly meant to conceal. The first blueprint they unrolled seemed straightforward at a glance. It depicted a grand temple complex, the kind you might expect from an ancient civilization, with wide courtyards, towering pillars, and spacious ceremonial halls. It was a map of the public face of their society, a place of worship and community gathering. But Dr. Thorne's team quickly realized that nothing about these documents was as simple as it first appeared. Their trained eyes caught the subtle anomalies that would have been invisible to anyone else. Certain walls on the parchment were not drawn with a single, solid line, but with two parallel ones, creating a narrow, empty space between them. Other chambers, clearly labeled and detailed, had no doors, no corridors, no access points of any kind. They were simply there, isolated boxes on the page, sealed away from the main structure. This prompted an immediate and thrilling investigation. The team took their modern ground-penetrating radar and other scanning equipment directly to the actual ruins, to the very walls that had been standing for a millennium. The scans revealed the stunning truth. Behind what appeared to be solid, unbroken stone, the phantom rooms from the blueprints did indeed exist. The empty spaces were real. This was the moment the nature of the discovery fundamentally changed. They understood that these blueprints were not merely building instructions. They were a deliberate and sophisticated map of duality. One layer showed the visible world, the spaces meant for the eyes of the common people. The other layer, hidden in the code of double lines and sealed chambers, revealed a secret world built directly into the heart of their most public monument. This architectural deception speaks volumes about the civilization that created it. It suggests a society with incredibly complex social and religious hierarchies. Knowledge was not for everyone. It was a form of power carefully controlled and distributed. The truths held within those hidden rooms, the rituals or technologies they contained, were reserved for a select, initiated few. The grand, beautiful temple that everyone could see and admire was, in a very real sense, a decoy. It was the public performance designed to command respect and obedience. But the real story, the true purpose, and perhaps the genuine power of this place was hidden in plain sight, waiting silently behind the walls for 1,000 years for someone with the right key to find it. The margins of those ancient blueprints held secrets just as profound as the hidden rooms they detailed. Scattered around the technical diagrams was a dense script, a language of cryptic symbols and curling characters that initially baffled every linguist who examined them. For months, the annotations remained an impenetrable wall, separating the modern team from the minds of the ancient architects. The breakthrough came from an unexpected corner. A junior researcher, spending a late night comparing the symbols to a digital archive of regional proto-languages, noticed a striking similarity. The script shared core structural elements with a handful of fragments previously discovered in a distant, forgotten trade outpost hundreds of miles away. This was not a direct translation, but it was a key. It gave them a phonetic basis, a starting point from which the code could finally begin to crack. And as the first words were translated, the team realized these annotations were far more than simple labels. They were a complex blend of warnings and sacred instructions. Repeated phrases like Passage of Trials and Chamber of Echoes began to emerge from the parchment. These were paired with recurring symbols that linguists gradually identified as representations of fundamental elements: water, earth, fire, air, and celestial bodies like the sun and specific stars. This was not merely functional architectural notation. It was a narrative. The blueprints were telling a story, describing a profound, sequential journey or a ritual that the building's hidden parts were specifically designed to facilitate. The language itself revealed the architects as more than just master builders. They were philosophers and spiritual guides, embedding their entire worldview, their cosmology, and their beliefs about human transformation directly into the geometry of the walls they designed. Understanding this lost language was the crucial first step to understanding the true purpose of the ruins. This was not a project meant for mere shelter or even conventional worship. The structure was a machine for enlightenment, a physical path built to guide a chosen few through a transformative experience, with every hidden corridor and sealed chamber serving a specific, sacred step in that process. Armed with the translated annotations, the archaeological team knew exactly where to look. Their ground-penetrating radar swept across the ancient stone floors, and the readings that returned were unequivocal. A complete, unknown network of tunnels and chambers lay beneath their feet, a hidden world that matched the blueprints line for line. This was not a collection of forgotten storerooms. Each space was a masterpiece of intentional design. One chamber, which the team named the Resonance Room, was engineered with stunning precision. Its walls were curved and its surfaces angled to capture and amplify very specific sound frequencies, turning a whisper into a resonant hum that filled the entire space. This was architecture as a musical instrument, built for a purpose far beyond simple acoustics. Another hidden space, the Star Vault, revealed a ceiling carved not with random patterns, but with a precise map of the night sky. Astronomers confirmed it depicted constellations as they appeared not in the present day, but in a specific epoch over 1,000 years prior. These were not decorative afterthoughts. The aligned ventilation shafts ensured a constant, clean airflow, while intricate carvings on the walls only became fully visible when light from a single, narrow shaft struck them at a particular angle during the solstice. Every single feature was deliberate and functional. The blueprints were not just a map of hidden rooms, They were a master key to a multi-layered reality where science, spirituality, and architecture were completely intertwined. The grand public temple was merely the shell, the true heart of the complex. Its most vital and sophisticated components were the spaces deliberately built to be invisible, proving that the most important parts of this structure were the ones you were never meant to see. So what kind of ceremony required a room that could sing, or a vault that remembered the stars? The purpose of these hidden spaces points to a civilization whose understanding of the world was far more advanced and far more mysterious than anyone had ever believed. The second set of blueprints presented an even greater puzzle, found carefully rolled inside a sealed ceramic tube. These documents were more fragile, yet they revealed a project of staggering ambition. They detailed a vast subterranean network, a web of engineered passages connecting the main temple to several smaller, outlying sites scattered across miles of rugged terrain. These were not mere tunnels dug through the earth. The drawings showed sophisticated infrastructure, complete with intricate drainage channels to manage groundwater, small, carved-out resting chambers spaced at regular intervals, and a series of unique symbols etched into the walls that clearly served as wayfinding markers. The entire system was designed for purposeful, sustained movement, yet the scale of the passages ruled out any conventional use. They were far too narrow for moving armies or trade goods, and the chambers could only accommodate a handful of people at a time. This physical constraint forced a dramatic shift in perspective. This was not a public works project. It was a private highway. The leading theory suggests this was a secret pilgrimage route, a sacred path for an initiated few to travel between holy sites unseen by the common world. Alternatively, it could have functioned as a meticulously planned escape route, allowing a privileged elite to vanish safely during a siege or a natural disaster. The most astonishing aspect, however, was the engineering foresight. The blueprints indicated precise gradients for water runoff and architectural supports specifically calculated to withstand seismic activity. This revealed a civilization with a profound, practical understanding of geology and physics. They were not just building for ceremony or immediate need. They were investing in the long term, ensuring that their most vital knowledge and people could endure any catastrophe, moving safely through the darkness beneath the world they had built. Among the lines and annotations, one symbol appeared with striking frequency, a curling, river-like mark the team named the flow glyph. It was etched beside intricate networks of channels and reservoirs woven throughout the blueprints. At first glance, this seemed like pure pragmatism, an advanced drainage system to manage rainfall and protect the structures from flooding. But the true purpose was far more profound. These waterways were not hidden away. The blueprints deliberately routed them through the heart of ceremonial spaces, transforming functional engineering into a core component of spiritual practice. The architects designed specific chambers where water would flow over precisely angled stones, creating not just a visual spectacle but a harmonic resonance, a natural music that filled the room. The sound and sight of moving water were not accidental background noise, they were an engineered sacrament. This reveals a civilization that perceived no boundary between the practical and the sacred. For them, water was a single, unified force. It was the most vital physical resource, channeled, filtered, and stored with brilliant foresight in deep cisterns to sustain life through dry seasons. Simultaneously, it was a profound metaphysical element, a living conduit for purification and a medium for communication with the divine. The blueprints were a masterclass in harnessing this dual nature. They show us a culture with a holistic worldview, one where every drop of rain was both a drink for the body and a note in a symphony for the soul. What does it mean to live in a world where engineering a water channel is itself a prayer, where the most mundane task of survival is inseparable from the highest spiritual act. This unity of purpose may be the most revolutionary idea this lost civilization has left for us to find. The third set of blueprints presented a mystery that shifted their gaze from the earth to the heavens. These diagrams, drawn on a different type of treated hide, focused less on walls and rooms and more on empty space and celestial bodies. They were essentially maps of the sky, meticulously plotting the positions of the main temple complex against the sun, the moon, and a handful of particularly bright stars. At first, this seemed like an abstract exercise, a philosophical overlay. But when the team began to test these celestial blueprints against the actual ruins, the true genius of the architects was revealed. They found that the main entrance was not merely a grand doorway. It was a precision instrument. On the day of the equinox, the rising sun would align perfectly with the gate, and a single, sharp beam of light would travel across the central hall to illuminate a carved symbol that was otherwise completely invisible in the shadows. This was not a happy accident. It was a deliberate, calculated event, a piece of theater engineered in stone. The discoveries grew even more profound within the hidden chambers. In one of the sealed rooms, a narrow shaft, no wider than a person's arm, pierced the ceiling at a steep, precise angle. According to the astronomical data in the margins, this shaft was designed to capture the light of one specific, distant star. But this event did not happen every year or even every decade. The alignment occurred only once every 52 years. This was architecture operating on a timescale that dwarfed a single human life. It was a long-term clock and a calendar built directly into the world, a way of marking deep time that was immune to the rise and fall of kings or the chaos of history. The data contained within these celestial diagrams was so incredibly accurate that modern astronomers could use it to pinpoint the exact era of the temple's construction. By calculating the slow precession of the stars, they could determine that the main alignment shaft was designed to be perfect around the year 920, give or take a single decade. This celestial connection fundamentally changes our understanding of this civilization. They were not just master builders and spiritual philosophers. They were sophisticated scientists who used their advanced knowledge of astronomy to guide the very soul of their sacred spaces. The temple was not just positioned on the land, it was anchored to the cosmos itself, a permanent monument to their belief that human destiny was written in the stars. But the greatest engineering marvel was not the temple itself, it was the survival of the instructions that built it. How could fragile documents drawn on organic materials endure for 1,000 years in a desert climate? The answer lies in a sophisticated, multi-layered preservation system that proves the architects were thinking centuries ahead. Scientific analysis of the blueprints revealed they were not drawn on simple parchment. The material was a composite, a carefully crafted sheet made from layers of specially treated animal hide, interwoven with strong plant fibers for durability. The ink itself was a chemical masterpiece, a mineral-based compound that bonded with the hide, resisting fading from light and repelling moisture without cracking or flaking. This was not ordinary ink, it was a permanent stain designed for eternity. The protection extended far beyond the documents themselves. The underground chamber where they were found was not a random pit. Its walls were lined with a thick crust of a naturally occurring salt, a mineral that actively pulls water vapor from the air. This lining turned the small room into a natural desiccator, a perfectly stable microclimate where humidity was nearly zero. No mold could grow, no insect could thrive, and the delicate hides were shielded from the cyclical decay that destroys almost everything left in the ground. This was not a lucky accident, it was environmental engineering on a microscopic scale. the architects did not just design buildings, they designed the preservation of their own knowledge. They understood the chemistry of their materials and the geology of their site, combining them to create a time capsule of breathtaking intention. These blueprints were not temporary working documents to be discarded after construction. They were a deliberate message to posterity, crafted with the explicit goal of being discovered by a future generation. The immense care taken in their creation, from the molecular level of the ink to the atmospheric control of the chamber, screams one thing. The secrets these plans held were not just important for their own time. They were considered vital, essential knowledge that had to survive the collapse of their civilization and be passed down through the ages. What could possibly be so important that they went to such incredible lengths to make sure we would find it? The most intimate discovery was not a blueprint at all, but a personal diary. Tucked inside the ceramic tube with the grand designs was a smaller, more fragile scroll, its script flowing and less formal. These were the private notes of the lead architect, a man the team came to call the master builder. His words pulled back a curtain of centuries, revealing that the greatest conflict in building this wonder was not against nature, but against human nature. He wrote of immense pressure from the ruling elite, the kings and priests who demanded more grandiose monuments, taller towers, and wider plazas designed solely to project their power and intimidate their rivals. They wanted a spectacle, but the master builder repeatedly refused. His notes are filled with a desperate, almost spiritual insistence on adhering to what he called the true path, the original vision granted to him. He was not just an engineer, he was a guardian. His core duty, as he saw it, was maintaining a delicate and crucial balance and protecting what he mysteriously referred to only as the source. This source was not a physical object like a spring or a gemstone. From his writings, it seems to have been a principle, a kind of natural or divine energy that the entire complex was designed to harmonize with. The hidden chambers, the aligned passageways, the resonant rooms, they were not secret for the sake of secrecy. They were essential components in a vast architectural instrument designed to interface with this source. To alter the designs for mere vanity, to build a louder but less precise instrument, would be to corrupt everything. It would risk unbalancing a force he clearly believed was fundamental to the world's order. This adds a profound human drama to the stones and tunnels. We are no longer looking at a static, perfect ruin. We are witnessing the outcome of a fierce ethical struggle, where one person's integrity preserved a sacred technology for 1,000 years. His personal battle against ambition ensured that the hidden heart of the temple remained pure, a sanctuary for a truth he believed was far more important than any one ruler's legacy. What kind of man chooses the silent perfection of a hidden chamber over the roaring approval of a crowd? He believed he was protecting something the entire world needed, something that could be lost forever if built incorrectly. This radical interpretation began with a simple but startling observation. Certain key chambers in the hidden network were aligned directly above known geological fault lines, places where the Earth's crust is under immense pressure and subtle energies are constantly in flux. Researchers noticed that the blueprints specified the use of specific, highly conductive metals in the construction of these rooms, metals that were rare and difficult to obtain, suggesting their selection was absolutely deliberate. When they combined this with the already documented acoustic properties of the resonance room, a new and extraordinary possibility emerged. What if the entire complex was not merely a spiritual instrument, but a functional one? The theory, known as the energy conduit theory, proposes that the temple was designed to act as a giant collector and amplifier for a form of natural terrestrial energy. The fault lines provided the raw power like a battery deep within the planet. The conductive metals woven into the structure acted as wires, channeling this energy through the network. The resonant chambers then tuned it, perhaps even transforming it into a usable form. In this view, the master builder was not just a spiritual guardian, he was the chief engineer of a sophisticated technology that seamlessly merged physics with faith. The sacred rituals performed in those hidden spaces might have been methods of interacting with or even directing this harnessed power. This idea is, of course, highly controversial within mainstream archaeology. There is no smoking gun, no ancient power switch or glowing crystal left behind to prove it, but the circumstantial evidence woven through the blueprints is compelling. It suggests a civilization that perceived the world as a living, energetic system and learned to build architectures that could tap into its fundamental rhythms. This pushes the boundaries of history, forcing us to ask a difficult question. Could ancient wisdom have encompassed concepts of energy harnessing that we consider exclusively modern? The blueprints in this radical reading are not just a map of hidden rooms. They are the wiring diagram for a lost science, a forgotten way of seeing the universe where prayer and power were two expressions of the same incredible force. The fifth set of blueprints revealed a defense system of breathtaking subtlety. These designs showed no murder holes, no spike pits, no heavy gates meant to bar a physical army. Instead, the architects engineered a labyrinth of the mind. They drafted false corridors that curved imperceptibly, leading an intruder in a perfect, disheartening circle back to where they started. They designed doorways that were masterpieces of shadow and perspective, appearing as inviting passages until you walked directly into a solid, unyielding wall. One chamber, labeled only with a symbol for dizziness, was engineered with angled floors and specific sound frequencies to induce a profound sense of vertigo and confusion. The entire system was a non-lethal gauntlet of perception. Its sole purpose was to turn the intruder around, to make them believe they were lost, to convince their own mind to give up and leave. This was not a defense against force, but a defense against curiosity. It reveals that the civilization's greatest fear was not destruction by an enemy, but corruption from within. They believed that their most profound secrets, the knowledge of the source and the energy it represented, could be dangerous if grasped by someone unprepared. It was a sacred technology that required a specific mindset, a purified intention to even approach without causing harm. The blueprints, therefore, were not just a map of the physical temple. They were a test. To navigate the real hidden chambers, one would first need the mental clarity and spiritual focus to see through the illusions, to hear past the disorienting echoes, and to understand that the true path was not always the one that looked most obvious. The greatest danger in seeking this ancient knowledge was never the crumbling stone or the dark passage. It was the deception of your own senses, a trial designed to ensure that only those who had truly mastered themselves could ever hope to master the secrets the temple was built to protect. The very stones of the temple were arranged to enforce a social order. The blueprints show this division with chilling clarity. The vast outer courtyards, designed to hold thousands, were the domain of the common people. Here, the architecture was about spectacle and awe, with towering statues and open spaces meant to inspire collective reverence, but movement inward was strictly controlled. The inner temples, with their libraries and formal altars, were reserved for the priests and governing officials, the administrative class that managed the day-to-day functions of both state and spirit. And then there were the spaces not marked on any public record, the hidden chambers accessible only through secret passages and cleverly disguised doors. The annotations give a name to those permitted here, the initiated or sometimes the keepers. This was the true elite, not of birth or political office, but of knowledge. The entire complex was a physical manifestation of a filtration system, sorting people not by wealth, but by their perceived readiness to handle dangerous truths. The general public experienced the temple as a place of communal ritual. The priests understood it as a center of theological doctrine, but only the keepers knew it as a working machine, a technological and spiritual instrument. The segregation was absolute. A farmer from the outer courtyard could not even conceive of the resonance room humming silently behind the wall he prayed toward. This control of knowledge was the ultimate source of power. To know the temple's true purpose was to hold the key to the civilization's core identity. This is precisely why the blueprints were so dangerous and why they had to be buried. They were more than a construction guide, they were a revolutionary document. In the wrong hands, they would expose the entire hierarchical structure, revealing that the grand public religion was just the surface layer of a much deeper, more potent reality. They showed everyone exactly where the real power was hidden, and more dangerously, that it was kept from them. The survival of these plans gives us a master key to understanding the tense, carefully balanced power dynamics of a world we thought was lost. It makes you wonder, in our own societies, what invisible walls and hidden chambers dictate who gets to know what, and how far each of us is really permitted to go. The sixth set of blueprints revealed a machine that blurred the line between plumbing and philosophy. It was a complex hydraulic device, an intricate network of stone basins, narrow channels, and counterweighted levers designed to use the steady drip of water to measure something as abstract as time itself. This was not a simple hourglass. The system of interconnected vessels was calibrated with stunning precision, allowing it to track not just the hours of a single day, but the passing of entire seasons and years. Water collected from the sacred channels would flow into a primary reservoir. From there, it was metered out through a precise opening, filling a secondary chamber drop by drop. As this chamber filled, a float would rise, eventually triggering a stone lever. That lever would release a ball into a track, marking the passage of a set period, or it would open a gate to begin filling the next vessel in the sequence. The entire apparatus was a mechanical brain, thinking in the slow, patient language of flowing water. Its true genius, however, was in its connection to the cosmos. The blueprints clearly show a linkage between this water clock and the celestial alignment chambers. The device was not isolated, it was part of a feedback loop. The long-term calendar built into the hydraulic system would, in theory, predict the grand celestial events, like the once every 52-year stellar alignment. Then, when that event occurred, the observation from the star shaft would provide a physical confirmation, a chance to check the machine's accuracy and reset it if necessary. This created a perfect harmony between earthly measurement and heavenly observation. The flowing water represented the constant, cyclical nature of time, a force that could be harnessed and understood. The positions of the stars provided the fixed points in the vastness, the absolute truth against which all human measures were compared. This machine was their cosmological model made physical. It was a declaration that time was not a straight line rushing toward an end, but a great, repeating wheel, as predictable and nourishing as the annual flood of a river, and as eternal as the stars in their courses. To see the simple stone gears and wooden levers detailed on the ancient hide is to witness a moment of profound intellectual leap. This civilization possessed a level of mechanical engineering that rewrites our understanding of their capabilities. They were not just stargazers and stonemasons. They were clockmakers for the ages, building a machine that sought to bind the flow of a mountain stream to the infinite turn of the galaxy. For generations, the local people told stories their neighbors dismissed as mere fantasy. They spoke of a sunken city of wisdom, a place not drowned in water, but submerged in secrecy, where the greatest minds of a lost age gathered. They whispered of a well of truth, a shaft so deep it was said to hold answers to every question ever asked. To the archaeologists, these were charming folktales, poetic but ultimately unhelpful. That changed the day they laid the blueprints alongside the transcribed legends. The parallels were not just similar, they were exact. The mythical well of truth described in epic poems matched, line for line, the central shaft in the ruins that plunged straight down through solid rock into a deep, natural aquifer. The fabled layout of the sunken city, with its 7 concentric rings of knowledge, aligned perfectly with the 7 hidden chambers radiating from the temple's core. The legends were not invented, they were a memory. They were the oral blueprint passed down from parent to child for 1,000 years, long after the last stones were laid and the true purpose of the place was forgotten. The people had preserved the function of the ruins in the only way they could, by weaving it into the fabric of their identity, transforming sophisticated engineering into the magic of a sunken city and a well of truth. This connection does more than just validate a local myth. It bridges the profound gap between the hard science of archaeology and the soft power of storytelling. It proves that mythology is often a container for historical truth, a narrative vessel designed to carry vital information across generations when written records turn to dust. The tales of the Well of Truth were not about literal water that granted omniscience. They were a metaphorical description of the temple's core purpose, drawing knowledge from a deep, hidden source, just as a well draws water from the earth. The blueprints give us the literal ground plan for a civilization's greatest achievement, but the legends give us its soul, its enduring purpose etched not in stone but in the human heart. What other ancient tales, dismissed as simple fantasy, might be waiting for us to find their key? Perhaps the most baffling discovery inside the ruins was the chamber marked on the blueprints as the Hall of Records. The name itself promised a treasure trove of lost knowledge, a library of scrolls or clay tablets that could finally speak the civilization's own history. Yet when the team broke through the final stone barrier, they found a room that was utterly, perplexingly bare. There were no shelves, no alcoves, not a single fragment of pottery or trace of organic material. The room was a perfect, hollow cube of stone, silent and empty. It was as if the very purpose of the place had been erased. The confusion was total. Why would the architects go to such lengths to hide and protect a room with nothing in it? The answer was not in what the room contained, but what the room itself was. A breakthrough in linguistics turned the mystery inside out. The ancient word translated as records did not solely mean scrolls or documents. In its fuller context, it meant a permanent account, an inscription meant to endure. The researchers had been looking for a library in the room. They were standing inside the book. Every surface of the chamber, from the floor to the soaring ceiling, was a dense, continuous text. The walls were not simply decorated with carvings. They were covered in a standardized, repetitive system of symbols, a kind of tactile code. It was not meant to be seen so much as read, a narrative etched directly into the bones of the building. This was an architectural library, a form of information storage so radical it was virtually theft-proof and immortal. Scrolls can burn, ink fades, but this history was woven into the structure itself. To destroy the information, you would have to demolish the entire mountain of stone. The blueprint for this room was not a guide for builders. It was a set of instructions for writers. It detailed the specific sequence for reading the symbols, a path that spiraled up from the floor, across the walls, and onto the ceiling, telling a continuous story of origins, philosophy, and law. This changes everything we thought we knew about how knowledge was preserved. They engineered a vessel for their culture that was as permanent as the earth, ensuring their voice would never be completely silenced by time. What stories do you suppose were important enough to carve into the very heart of the world, meant to outlast empires and speak to people 1,000 years in the future? Tucked away with the grand architectural plans was a document of an entirely different nature. This one was not a diagram of stone, but of soil and leaf, a beautifully illustrated guide to a hidden garden. It depicted a serene, walled enclosure situated directly beside the main temple, a meticulously planned landscape of flowering plants, shaded trees, and gently flowing water channels. At first glance, it seemed like a purely aesthetic retreat, a place for quiet contemplation away from the grand ceremonies, but the true purpose of this garden was far more potent. Modern soil core samples taken from the site told a different story. The analysis revealed chemical traces of specific, powerful botanicals, plants long known for their medicinal properties, and in some cases their profound psychoactive effects. This was not a decorative space, it was a living pharmacy, a carefully cultivated collection of nature's most powerful chemistry. The blueprint itself confirmed this function. It detailed companion planting strategies, showing how certain species were placed together to enrich the soil or deter pests naturally. The irrigation system was engineered not just for hydration, but to deliver precise amounts of water to plants with very specific needs. This was a level of botanical science that rivals modern organic farming, demonstrating a deep, practical understanding of the plant kingdom. This garden was the essential, living partner to the stone and metal of the temple. The substances grown here were the key that unlocked the experiences intended for the hidden chambers. The herbs and flowers harvested from these beds were likely prepared into teas, incenses, or ointments used in the rituals conducted in the resonance room or the star vault. They were tools deliberately employed to alter human consciousness, to ease a healer into a diagnostic trance, or to open a spiritual seeker's mind to the cosmic harmonies the architecture was designed to amplify. This reveals a culture that saw no division between the spiritual and the scientific, between the mind and the body. They understood that human perception was a flexible thing, and that the natural world offered direct chemical pathways to states of being they considered sacred. They were not merely building with stone, they were gardening for the soul, engineering their entire environment to facilitate a direct, tangible encounter with the mysteries their civilization was built upon. The architects treated silence not as an absence, but as a substance to be sculpted. Their blueprints reveal a stunningly sophisticated science of acoustics, where every surface was angled and every material chosen not just for strength, but for its sonic properties. They specified that the walls of the main ceremonial hall be lined with a specific, dense granite, not for its beauty, but because its crystalline structure reflected sound with perfect clarity, creating a reverberation that made a single voice sound like a chorus. Another chamber required a porous volcanic stone that would absorb certain frequencies, creating pockets of profound quiet. This was not random. It was audio engineering on a monumental scale. Modern researchers, using the blueprint specifications, created digital models of these rooms. When they introduced specific chants or sequences of musical notes into the simulation, they observed the formation of perfect standing waves. These are patterns where sound waves reinforce each other, causing the air itself to vibrate in a stable, rhythmic pulse. The model suggested that certain frequencies, sustained in these architecturally perfect conditions, could physically affect human brainwave patterns, gently guiding the mind into deep states of calm or intense, laser-like focus. This was architecture as a direct interface with human consciousness. The most telling example of this sonic mastery is the Chamber of Whispers. According to the plans, this was a long, oval room with a parabolic ceiling. Its design was so precise that a secret spoken in the faintest breath in one specific corner would travel along the curved wall and focus, perfectly audible, only in the opposite corner. Someone standing just a few feet away in the center of the room would hear nothing. This was the ultimate tool for the transmission of hidden knowledge, allowing initiation to pass from teacher to student in a room full of other people, completely undetected. Sound for these builders was not for entertainment. It was a tangible force. It was a tool for ritual, a method for healing, and a secure channel for the most protected truths of their culture. They built with sound as deliberately as they built with stone, understanding that what we hear in a space can transform us just as deeply as what we see. The master builder's final words were not a prayer but a prophecy. On the back of his personal scroll, written in a faded ink that was clearly meant to be hidden, he left a single, chilling sentence. The balance is fragile. The source must not be tapped by unworthy hands, lest the sky fall and the earth swallow us whole. This is more than a philosophical musing. It is a direct warning, etched in desperation across the very document that details his life's work. For decades, scholars have debated its true meaning. Is it a metaphor for the collapse of a social order, a caution that sacred knowledge in the hands of a tyrant could lead to cultural annihilation, or should we take his words at face value? The blueprints show a structure intricately linked to geological fault lines and natural energies. What if the source he protected was not just a spiritual concept, but a tangible, physical force? The temple, in this terrifyingly literal reading, was not merely harnessing energy. It was acting as a regulator, a control mechanism for a volatile power deep within the earth that, if mishandled, could trigger catastrophic seismic events. The sky falling could refer to atmospheric disruptions, while the earth swallowing them whole paints a vivid picture of the ground itself opening up. This interpretation transforms the entire discovery. The ruins are not just a monument to forgotten science. They are the housing for a dormant system, a cork in a bottle that the master builder feared could be pulled. His warning adds a layer of profound urgency to the archaeology. This is no longer about understanding the past. It is about heeding it. He went to incredible lengths to hide the blueprints, not just to preserve knowledge, but to sequester a dangerous truth. He was trying to protect the future from a power his civilization understood, but perhaps could not ultimately control. The greatest secret buried in the ruins is not how they were built, but why they were built to contain something. And the most haunting question remains, is that something still there, waiting silently beneath the stone for an unworthy hand to finally tap the source? The materials listed in the blueprints told a story of their own. Detailed inventories specified types of timber, stone, and metals that geological surveys confirmed were utterly foreign to the local region. The hard, dark granite for the resonant chambers was quarried from mountains over 300 miles to the north. The specific conductive ores for the energy conduits were mined from a single, isolated vein deep in the eastern highlands. This was not a project built from what was locally available. It was a conscious curation of the continent's finest and most specialized resources, assembled from hundreds of miles away. This simple fact of procurement shatters the image of an isolated, mystical cult working in secret. It reveals the builders as players in an extensive and sophisticated trade network. The construction of the complex was not just an architectural marvel, it was a colossal logistical and economic undertaking, coordinating the transport of multi-ton stone blocks and rare metals across such vast distances required immense political influence and staggering wealth. It meant negotiating safe passage through countless territories, organizing caravans of specialized laborers, and managing a supply chain that stretched to the horizon. The blueprints in this light take on a new, more practical function. They were likely the central document in this vast enterprise, acting as a universal specification sheet and a form of binding contract. A metalsmith from the eastern mines who spoke a different language and worshipped different gods could look at the diagram and know exactly what purity of ore was required. A master carpenter from the northern forests could see the precise dimensions for beams of a specific, slow-grown cedar. The complex was therefore a melting pot long before the first stone was laid. It was a hub where knowledge, goods, and skilled people from across the known world converged. This forces a dramatic rethinking of the site's secrets. The profound knowledge of astronomy, the advanced hydraulics, the sophisticated acoustics, they may not have been the sole invention of one brilliant but isolated culture. They could have been a collective effort, a grand synthesis of wisdom. The best stargazers from the plains, the most ingenious water engineers from the river deltas, the most masterful stonecutters from the mountains, all might have contributed their piece to the whole. The ultimate secret buried in the ruins might not be a single truth, but the power of collaboration itself, the forgotten idea that the greatest human achievements are born when diverse minds and distant resources are woven together into a single, perfect design. Layers of parchment, stone, and sky suddenly clicked into a single, breathtaking design. By overlaying the architectural, celestial, hydraulic, and botanical blueprints, the team saw the truth. The entire complex was not a collection of separate buildings, but a single, cohesive instrument for human transformation. The lines and symbols revealed a precise ritual pathway, a multi-sensory script for a profound spiritual journey. This was not a simple corridor from point A to point B. It was an orchestrated sequence of physical and psychological stages, each designed to prepare the participant for the next. The journey began in the grand public courtyard, but not on any random day. The celestial blueprints dictated the start, a specific alignment of the sun or stars that would bathe the entrance in a transformative light, marking the seeker's first step out of the ordinary world. From there, the path turned inward and downward, away from the crowds and into the hidden chambers. This was the phase of trials. The initiate would first encounter the engineered waterways, perhaps drinking from a sacred channel or being cleansed by its harmonically tuned flow, a physical and symbolic purification. Next came the acoustic chambers, where specific frequencies played upon the walls would guide their brain into a state of deep receptivity, stripping away mental clutter. In the botanical garden, a carefully prepared tea or incense, grown from the potent plants detailed in the plans, might be administered, altering perception and opening the mind to new layers of reality. Each step was a key, unlocking a door within the person that made them ready for the next challenge. The culmination of this intricate journey was the Star Vault. After navigating the disorienting defense labyrinths and passing through the resonant and botanical trials, the participant would finally arrive in this sealed chamber. Here at the appointed time, the narrow shaft would open to the heavens, allowing the light of one specific, long-awaited star to pierce the darkness. In that silent, focused moment, surrounded by the celestial map on the ceiling, all the preceding experiences, the water, the sound, the herbs, would converge. The participant was no longer just a visitor in a temple. They had become a note in a cosmic symphony, a conscious part of an ancient, repeating ritual designed to bridge the gap between the human and the divine. The blueprints were never just instructions for building walls. They were a recipe for creating a specific state of being, a meticulously crafted journey to show a chosen few that the universe was not outside of them, but something they could step into and finally understand. The ruins hold one final, sobering secret in their silent stones. There is no evidence of a cataclysmic end here, no layer of ash from a great fire, no shattered weapons from a final battle, no mass graves from a plague. The complex was not destroyed, it was simply left behind. The story of its abandonment is written not in dramatic ruins but in the quiet, accumulating dust. Geological core samples taken from the main courtyards show a gradual buildup of wind-blown sediment, layer upon thin layer, uninterrupted by the debris of collapse or conflict. This was a slow departure, a quiet fading away, the personal notes of the master builder, written generations before the end, foreshadow this internal decay. He laments a growing loss of the way among the younger initiates, a faction that valued the temple's political influence over its sacred purpose. They saw the energy conduits and resonant chambers not as tools for enlightenment, but as instruments of control. This ideological schism likely grew over decades, perhaps centuries. The knowledge required to maintain the delicate hydrological clocks and calibrate the celestial alignments was not written down in simple manuals. It was an oral tradition, a living science passed directly from master to apprentice. All it would take is a single broken chain in that lineage, one generation that failed to fully grasp the principles, for the entire system to begin a slow, irreversible decline. The final keepers, the last guardians of the source, were then faced with an impossible choice. They could watch their civilization's greatest achievement be slowly corrupted, its power twisted into an engine for tyranny, or they could end it themselves. The act of burying the blueprints was not an act of forgetfulness. It was a profound and deliberate act of preservation. By sealing the core chamber and hiding the master plans, they chose to put the knowledge to sleep. They decided that it was safer for this powerful truth to be lost entirely than to be misused by their own people. The complex, therefore, stands as a haunting monument to a terrifying possibility. It suggests that a civilization's greatest wisdom can become its most fragile possession, and that the ultimate act of guardianship might not be to protect a secret, but to knowingly let it vanish from the world. This ancient complex speaks directly to the fractures in our own modern world. We design cities as collections of separate functions, zoning areas for living, working, and commerce, creating environments that often feel disconnected and impersonal. The blueprint of this lost civilization presents a radical alternative, a model of holistic design where architecture, ecology, astronomy, and human psychology were woven into a single, living fabric. Their entire structure was a lesson in integration, a place where the flow of water, the position of a star, and the resonance of a sound were all essential, interlocking parts of a greater whole. This is a powerful challenge to our own fragmented way of building. What would our cities look like if we designed them not just for efficiency, but for human experience, creating spaces that engage all our senses and reconnect us to the natural world? Their mastery of sustainable resources is stunningly relevant. While we struggle with aging water infrastructure, their blueprints reveal a system that saw water not as a problem to be drained away, but as a sacred resource to be celebrated, harnessed, and integrated into daily spiritual life. They engineered channels that purified and stored water, turning a practical necessity into the centerpiece of community ritual. This stands in stark contrast to our own often utilitarian approach, where vital resources are hidden in pipes beneath the streets, out of sight and out of mind. Their philosophy suggests that by bringing the systems that sustain us into the light, by making them beautiful and integral to our shared spaces, we might foster a deeper, more respectful relationship with the very elements that keep us alive. Perhaps their most profound lesson is about knowledge itself. We live in an age of information where vast libraries exist in our pockets, yet this knowledge often feels abstract and disembodied. We read about the cosmos on a screen, but we rarely stand in a room and watch a beam of starlight travel across a wall that was built for that exact moment 1,000 years ago. This civilization did not just write their truths down, they built them into the environment. To learn their deepest secrets, you had to walk the path, drink the water, hear the sound, and feel the stone. Knowledge was not just intellectual, it was a full-body, multi-sensory experience. It was something to be lived. This challenges our digital reality at its core. It asks us if we are losing the ability to learn with our entire being, to understand the world through direct, tangible encounter rather than through a curated stream of data. The ruins whisper that the most transformative truths are not just found but felt, and that the spaces we build can either deaden that feeling or bring it vibrantly to life. For all the secrets the blueprints have surrendered, their silent passages lead us into an even deeper darkness, a space filled with questions that have no easy answers. The identity of the source, the force the master builder dedicated his life to protecting, remains the greatest enigma of all. Was it a purely spiritual concept, a divine wellspring of power that could only be perceived through faith and ritual? Or was it a tangible physical energy, a natural force like geothermal pressure or the planet's magnetic field, which their architecture had learned to channel? The evidence tantalizingly supports both interpretations, leaving us suspended between two worlds, unable to declare a final verdict. And if this complex was a regulator for such a power, are there others? The subterranean network on the blueprints does not simply end. It stretches toward the horizon, suggesting the possibility of sister sites, other hidden instruments in this continental symphony, all waiting silently beneath the soil for their turn to be discovered. Even within the known ruins, certain chambers defy all modern analysis. A room clearly labeled "The Convergence" on the parchment is a perfect example. Its unique shape and the specific materials required for its construction, including a strange metallic alloy, suggest it was designed to focus or combine different energies, yet its exact function is a complete mystery to our current understanding of physics. These lingering mysteries are not a sign of failure. They are the legacy of the civilization itself. They are a deliberate and profound invitation, a reminder that the past is not a puzzle to be solved and put away, but a conversation that never truly ends. The discovery of these blueprints did not close a book. It opened a doorway, and we have only just taken the first tentative step across its ancient threshold. These blueprints are a final testament, a civilization's soul rendered in lines of ink and intention. They are not mere architectural drawings, but a philosophical treatise on the nature of reality, a spiritual guide for navigating the cosmos, and a stark warning about the dangers of power, all encoded on fragile sheets of hide. They reveal a people who perceived no separation between the sacred and the scientific, between the earth they walked on and the stars they watched. Their entire world was a single, breathing, interconnected whole, and they built their greatest monument as a perfect microcosm of that unity. From the hidden chambers resonating with sound to the celestial calendars marking deep time, from the psychological labyrinths that tested the mind to the hydraulic clocks that married water to the seasons, every single detail was deliberate. Nothing was an accident. Every stone was placed, every channel dug, every shaft angled as part of a grand, symphonic design to harmonize human life with the fundamental rhythms of the universe. The greatest treasure they buried was never gold or jewels. It was a way of thinking, a radical perspective that challenges our modern fragmentation. It is a timeless reminder that the most vital truths, the most profound sources of power and understanding, are often deliberately hidden from plain view, waiting not to be owned, but to be earned by those willing to look deeper. As our tools grow sharper and our interpretations more nuanced, the work of decoding their secrets continues. This is not a task that will ever truly be finished. Each answered question reveals 3 new mysteries. Each translated symbol opens a door to a deeper corridor of wonder. The real legacy of these ruins is not a set of answers, but an invitation to a different way of being in the world. It is a call to carry forward their hard-won lessons of balance, of integration, and of a humble, profound respect for the forces we can measure and those that forever remain just beyond our grasp. Our own relentless search for understanding, for connection in a fractured world, is the blueprint we are now drawing, line by line, generation by generation.